This is going to be a quick video. I'm going to do it in one take. I'm going to be taking this Leupold tactical scope off of my Savage FLCP-K. I'm going to replace it with this Vortex. It's a 6-24 first focal plane with MOA hash marks on the reticle and MOA knob adjustments. And I'm going to replace the Leupold PWR rings, high rings, with these Vortex precision matched Riflescope rings in the low mount. Let's go ahead and open these rings up. These are precision matched, so the rings are supposed to follow each other through the entire manufacturing process. And they're supposed to be lined up exactly. So this is low height rings, 30mm. So I've taken the top off the rings, and following the instructions, I'm going to keep the orientation of the tops the same as they came from the factory, and the same tops on the same bottoms. So I marked it with some tape, rear and forward. I flipped things around after I marked it, so that's why it's upside down. I've got the rings placed on there loosely. The screws are tightened down just enough that the ring won't come off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cradle the scope on the rings. I'm going to see if the eye relief is about right. You want to have to move the scope forward and back, and I want to get these rings as far apart as possible, but still allow the scope to fully seat in the rings. For instance, this front ring is real close to where the tube expands out. So if I have to bring this back any farther, that's going to be a problem, so I'll have to move the ring back. Okay, I did my check, and then I double checked. I was able to move this rear ring back 1 notch. I shoot the rifle in the prone position, so I went ahead, just cradled the scope like this in the rings, and I got prone, and I checked the eye relief. The way I did that was I put the scope on maximum power, because that's where you have the least margin for eye relief. You got to get perfectly aligned. I got the scope about like that, so I'm just going to maximize the forward and rearward separation between the rings. If it didn't fit, I'd move one of these rings in. The Vortex manual didn't say anything about getting ring too close to the turrets. Some scopes, if you read the manual, tell you not to put the ring right here. Now it's time to torque these screws down. So I am going to use a torque driver. I bought one of these years ago, and I really like using it. You can torque down your screws precisely. You don't stretch the screws out. You don't over tighten them. An over tightened screw will actually break easier than a properly torqued screw. And a properly torqued screw shouldn't come out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to torque down, and I'm going to start relatively low, and I'm going to work my way up to the specified 45 to 50 inch-pounds, which is right about where this wrench maxes out. And what I'm going to do is, while I'm doing that, I'm going to push forward on the ring. One, that'll keep the ring straight, and two, when the rifle recoils, the rifle's going to move rearward. You don't want the scope to have any play in here, so you want the ridge that fits in the rail to be pushed forward against the front of this rail, so the scope can ride back, the rings can ride back, and the scope can ride back with the recoil. As I do this, I'm also going to go back forward, back forward, back forward, and I'm going to snug these down a little bit at a time, back and then forward. So these are supposed to be precision matched rings, and they're supposed to be lined up exactly because they've been machined together from the factory. So I'm going to actually check that using these scope alignment indicators. These particular ones are from Wheeler Engineering. That looks close enough. I don't think I'm going to bother with doing any type of lapping of the scope rings. So they're not quite perfect. Again, remember the base, the quality of the base is going to play a role in whether or not they're lined up. Our next step is to adjust the eye relief on the scope. We're going to just put the tops of the rings on gently, and be gentle enough that we can slide the scope forward and backwards. And the reason why you want to slide it forward and backwards is you're going to get down and you're going to check the eye relief. Again, max power, shoot, and you want to get in the same position that you're going to be shooting when you're actually using the rifle. Because your head position will actually change whether you're shooting from bents or shooting prone or shooting offhand. And remember, I've got my rings marked so I know which direction and which ring these things go on, so they're still matched. So I did two things off camera. At maximum power, I moved the scope forward and back to get the best eye relief. Now, pretty close on this front ring to where the bell starts, but I'm not hitting that bell yet, so pretty happy there. If I had gotten into that bell region, I'd have to start over. I'd have to move this ring back. The other thing I did off camera, and I'll try and show you, was I set the scope level. I don't have bubble levels. I do it by eye. If you do it another way, that's cool. I like doing it this way. What I do is I get the scope and I make sure that the vertical crosshair is pointed straight down towards the center of the bore. And you can do that while you're up close on the rifle with your eye where it would normally be when you're shooting to get it a course adjustment. And then what you can do is you can put the rifle at arm's length, and then you need to have this dial at minimum magnification, and you want to make sure that vertical crosshair is pointed straight down towards the center of the bore of the rifle. So this is an example of how you can use the vertical crosshair to align the scope, making sure that the vertical crosshair points down towards the center of the bore. Very hard to get the camera lined up, so I'm not sure if it's going to work. You can see the vertical crosshair there, and if you move the camera, if you move your eye up and down, you can see how it points more or less towards the center of the bore. It's very subjective. Now after that, I've snugged the rings down, and I'm going to take those rings, I'm going to torque them down. Now, looking at the crosshair, it does look like it's not perfect. It's not quite perfect. Looks like it's still canted a little bit. I'm going to make an adjustment off camera, and then we're going to torque those rings down. Now it's time to torque down the screws here to get the rings on tight. I used just a regular old driver to snug these down, and I checked the gap on either side of these so that they'd be approximately equal. Now I'm going to start the torque wrench again, and I'm going to start underneath the specified, underneath the torque. So I've set this to its minimum, which is 10, and I'm going to torque it in a star pattern. And that's so that one side does not get off more torque down the other. It'll give it an even torque all around. It's like putting together your car. And I'm going to slowly increase the torque up to about 18 inch-pounds. That's about it for this video. So mounted a Vortex Viper PST 6-24 with front focal plane MOA reticle on some Vortex precision machined Riflescope rings. These are the low rings on a Warne base, and you can see I still have some clearance even with the sunshade in place. So I'm going to take this rifle to the range at some point, sight it in. We'll set the zero stop. That'll be a video that will be forthcoming Thanks for watching. Hope you like my video, and please check out my channel. So the reason I'm doing this is I shoot in matches where after each shot the shot is placed, or the shot is marked, and I want to be able to correct for windage on the fly using holdovers. So the first focal plane will allow me to do that at any magnification, and then the MOA reticle will allow me to adjust both windage and elevation real time or using holdovers on the target. The Leupold is a great scope. It's second focal plane with mil dots, so you have to go zoom in all the way to use the mil dots, and mil dot to MOA conversion is a little tricky. Now and I don't hold off using the scope. I want to be able to hold off and not necessarily on max magnification. I'm going to be switching out the rings. I've got the Savage FLCP-K here. It's got a Warne Picatinny mount, and it's a 20 MOA base, so it's actually tilted to give you a little more range on the rifle and on the scope. But it's mounted up very high. So typically with the 50mm objective, you go with high rings. I did that with here, and I've got really an excessive amount of space. So this is a 223 shell, and it freely fits in there. So I'm going to use these rings. They're supposed to be precision matched. We're gonna test. We're gonna check to see if that's really true. I'm gonna mount the scope.